Hey, this is Wolf from Armory Terrain, and with Halloween only 2 short months away, it's time to start making Halloween props. This project build will be a candle in a skull that's going to be at a sign-in desk at one of the local clubs for Halloween. So what you're going to need for this project is a polystyrene skull. The bigger the skull, like more human size, the better. This one is pretty much, well, normal person size, so I'm obviously bigger than most people. You're also going to need an electric candle. Now these candles are pretty cool because they just unscrew from their base, leaving you with this part, which is the battery holder for the electric candle. Now we're using electric candles because this is inside and it saves me having to deal with flame and silly drunk people burning themselves and so forth. Now because I want the candle to sit on the skull and have wax melted down over it, I need something for the skull to sit on. So I'm also going to build a book for it. Now I could just use an old book. Max Sterling from LARPgasm has a really good tutorial on using 3 old books and some real candles to make a wizard's candle, but I don't like cutting up old books, so I'm just going to use a bit of core flute that I have. You could also use heavy cardboard or 3mm MDF or 6mm foam, pretty much anything as long as it will keep its shape. And then for the inside of the book, I've got a piece of polystyrene. You could also cut floor mat to size and glue it together, or use upholstery foam, pretty much anything to give you a bit of bulk. So what I'm going to do is pretty much break this tutorial into 2 halves. The first half dealing with the book and the second half dealing with the skull. So to start with, we're going to cut the 3 pieces for the book, the front, the back and the spine, out of the core flute, and then I'm going to gaff tape them together before covering them with vinyl. So I'll get to the vinyl covering stage and I'll show you how it looks. Okay, now as you can see, I've cut my core flute into the 3 pieces and I've hinged it with the gaff tape so it will bend into a book shape, which is probably useful since we're building a book. And I've put gaff tape all the way around the edges, just so when I glue the vinyl on, there's something to stick it to and there's no hollows. So the vinyl, I've marked out where it's going to go. I'm going to use a tacky glue to glue this down, which is just another type of white glue that isn't water soluble. It's great stuff. So I'm going to glue the cover down to it. I'm then going to glue this block of polystyrene into the center, and I'll show you how I finish it off. As you can see, we have something here that looks a little bit like a book until you turn it sideways, and then you can see the polystyrene in there. So we're going to fix that, and you'll also see that some of the corners are a little bit on the rough side. Now there's a couple of things you can do to fix those. You can either get the metal corners that sit on and look really fancy, or in my case I'm just going to have some wax running down there and I'm going to beat up this book a little bit to age it just a little bit more. Now to get rid of this polystyrene texture, also the block of polystyrene was hot glued into this. When you hot glue polystyrene it does melt, so you need to put the hot glue on the cover and then squeeze it shut and hold it till it cools, and then hopefully you haven't melted so much that it won't stick together. So anyway, to get rid of this texture, we're going to get the tacky glue or PVA glue for that matter, and we're just going to brush it on. Being nice and generous. I should really water this down a little bit, but I haven't. And then I'm going to get a tissue, fold it in half, then I'm going to fold it in half again, and I'm just going to place it into the hole there and paint more glue on the top. So this actually works a lot better if the glue is a little bit watered down. So I'm going to go and do that and come back and show you the effect that you can get. Now you may have remembered earlier when I said that the tacky glue doesn't dissolve with water, so you can't water it down. So for this job I had to switch back to some PVA glue, just normal white woodworking glue. Now as this dries, make sure you use tissues, not tissue paper, not toilet paper. You won't get the same effect. With the tissues, because of the grain in them and because I've been applying them long ways, you'll actually get wrinkles all the way along the book. So when you paint it, it'll actually look like pages. Now we could weather the hell out of this book now, sand it, oil it up, put splotches of paint on it, all the rest. Heck, you could even put a nice spine work on it if you wanted to. But since this is just a base for the skull, let me grab the skull again. As you can see, it sits quite well on the book. So I'm going to have it sit like that and mount the candle in the top, which you can't see, in the top here, and then have wax running down over the skull. Now this candle, I only want about half of it. Where am I? I only want about half of it. But since I can't cut the plastic and take the battery out, I'm going to have to dig a hole in the skull and sink the candle down into it. Now normally I just grab my drill and drill a hole in this, either in my drill press or in one of my cordless Ryobis. But it is after midnight here and I've got a fairly good neighbour policy where I don't upset them if I can help it. So the way I've done it instead is with a pair of scissors slightly opened, shoved into the skull and rotated as I've gone down and down, which means that this length candle is now only that much coming out of the top of the skull, which will allow me to have a lot of wax dripping down the sides. Now as soon as my hot glue gun heats up again, I'm going to be applying some hot glue to the base of this, hopefully not melting it too much, and then pressing it down into the book. At that point in time, this skull is going to get 1 or 2 coats of white glue to help seal it, and then I'm going to get busy with the hot glue gun and put some melted wax over it. Okay, the time is now 3:15 and I'm going to head off to bed because I've got to work tomorrow afternoon. And this is what I've gotten so far for this thing. Now obviously if I'd had time to wait for it to fully dry and put a wash on it, it would have looked slightly better. But I think you can get the idea and the impact that it will make, since it's just going to be sitting on the counter of a club in semi-darkness with the light flashing on it, or flickering as the case may be. Now there's no reason you couldn't put it on a stack of books. They're easy enough to make. I chose to just make the one book because the overhead part of the counter is not all that high up and I didn't want this to be too overwhelming. So yeah, this is Wolf from Armoury Terrain saying if I can make this in 3 hours early in the morning without any power tools, you should be able to make something too. So this is Wolf saying go out and make something.